Howdy! Another week's gone by. If you watched these videos before, you probably know by now I'm Dave Wood. This is Semiosis 101, and if you want to, you can fast forward to today's video. But if you're a newbie, stay exactly where you are, because this will be your first Semiosis 101 video. Well, if it is, I'm Dave Wood. I'm a design educator and researcher, a published design author, and I've worked commercially as both a freelance illustrator and a graphic designer. I actually use semiotics all the time in my creative work, but probably like yourselves, I was never taught semiotic theory at design school. I'm a Scouser from Liverpool and a New Scot, and this Scott Semiosis 101 YouTube channel focuses on explaining Peircean semiotic theory in a more designer-centric way to visual communication designers, illustrators, graphic designers. The guy behind the theory, Charles Sanders Peirce, wrote them in the late 19th, early 20th centuries in North America, and he was a philosopher, a mathematician, and a theorist, but not a creative. I have a PhD in visual communication, and it took until my doctorate to actually begin to study semiotic theory in order to really understand how to apply semiosis, the active sign action of semiotic science, when producing visual communication work. As a result, each week on this Scott Semiosis 101 YouTube channel, I'll post at least one 10-minute explainer video on an aspect of Peirce's pragmatic semiotic theory. Each free Semiosis 101 10-minute video will use designer-centric terms instead of Peirce's theoretical language so that illustrators and graphic designers can follow and understand. Each video will feature a take-home piece of applicable semiotic theory, and the videos, they do interconnect to build up your understanding of semiosis, but this channel, it's not a course in semiotics per se. Instead, think of each video as a bite-sized illustrated piece of new knowledge on sign action, or semiosis as Peirce names it. The aim of these free videos is to take Peirce's quite complex philosophical theoretical language and put it in the context of designing visual communication, whether these are illustrations, motion, branding, packaging, editorial, etc. So, whether you're just interested in semiotics, or you are a semiotician, a visual communicator, an illustrator or a graphic designer interested in knowing how Peirce's semiosis theory can help to enhance your visual communication skills, then please like these videos, subscribe to this channel below, and if you want to be notified when next week's video is ready, hit the bell button. Let's get to today's third episode on general Peircean semiotic theory for illustrators and designers. Today, in around 10 minutes, we will focus on revisiting Hall's semiotic journey in the context of Peirce's semiosis. We will dig deeper into the key differences between semiology and semiosis, the two forms of semiotic theory, to understand pragmatic sign action between a concept, representations, and interpretations. To help you see the real-world benefits of semiosis in enhancing your visual communication skills, I'll end on explaining how the theory's determination flow between the concept, its representation, and audience interpretation works. It will be a theory-packed 10 minutes of semiosis, but in design-centric terms. You ready? Subscribe, hit the bell button, let's go. Okay, so we're exploring Peircean semiotic theory. So we'll just come back to Sean Hall, and in his book, This Means This, This Means That, he uses Guide to Semiotics. He talks about the semiotic journey. So let's just explore the semiotic journey once more. We did it in the first video, but we're going to explore it again once more because it's important to put this into a context now of semiosis, Peircean semiotic theory, pragmatic semiotic theory. Okay, so in Peirce's semiotic theory, it begins a journey of the sender. The sender of the semiotic communication begins the whole thing off. It continues with the intention of that sender. Why does that sender need to communicate semiotically What's the intention behind that? In that intention, what is the message that needs to be semiotically communicated? How will that be transmitted? What will be in the way of that transmission that we need to overcome? The noise. Who does it go to? The receiver or the semiotic communication? Because communication is a two-way thing. It needs to have a receiver as well as the sender. So communication, two-way thing at least. And ultimately the destination of where that semiotic journey ends. Okay, so we've got this, which is very useful in Hall's book, John Hall's book. The sender, the intention, the message, the transmission, the noise, the receiver, the destination. This is really a crucial overview on how, in our case, visual communication works. Okay, this is about communication in general, but these videos are about visual communication. So the sender, the intention, the message, transmission, noise, the receiver, the destination. Let's put this into the context of visual communication design, graphic design, illustration. Everything starts off in our world with our clients. They are the ones who commission us to do a particular visual communication job for them. They have a brief, they brief us on what they need that we can supply them through our skills that we've honed and learned through design school into professional life. The brief. In that brief, as visual communicators, we're looking to really find what needs to be communicated through the skills that we employ for that, which comes into how we, as visual communication designers, graphic designers, illustrators, what mediums are we going to use to communicate that message? That's our transmission. But it's not just about pushing ideas out there through visual communication and hoping everyone is going to basically lap it up and really enjoy everything that you put out there, because there's always going to be some noise getting in the way of that. What gets in the way of that? Well, when I talk to students about if they're doing a poster project, how many other posters have they seen that day that they've not taken any notice of? Because if they're designing a poster, it's going to be competing against that. If you're designing a book, it's going to be on a bookshelf next to other books competing for the attention span of the audience. So what visual noise and other noise is going to get in the way of your intended receiver understanding and making decisions on what you design? Well, understanding who your audiences are is crucial in design, full stop. And it's also crucial within Peirce's semiotic theory, because it is really geared towards crafting, in our case, visual communication using semiotics that our audiences will connect with. And in future videos, we will really unpack all the aspects of what that means. Because where the destination is the fact that once your audience is exposed to your design, your illustration, your creative output, you want that to actually, those outcomes of your design process, to answer the brief for the client and actually do what the client has asked you to do, rather than just be, ooh, that's good. So effective visual communication that connects back to the message through the transmission, that connects with the intention of what your client asked you to do in the first place. So it's a win-win situation all around. And my arguments throughout all of these videos are going to be that Peirce's semiotic theory, despite the complexity of his language, of Peirce's language, gives you tools to be able to do that. And that's what we will unpack in these videos. So let's just quickly finish this video off by a reminder that there are two different semiotic theories. I will just outline what those two different semiotic theories are, because from now on, we're only going to be focusing in on Peirce's semiotic theory. Okay, so we're already aware that there are two forms of semiotic theory. There's from the North American school of thought, which is Peirce, and from the European is Saussure. Peirce's semiotic theory I call semiosis. It's a word he defined, which basically means sign action, the action of the sign. Semiosis, as opposed to Saussure's semiology. Semiosis, semiology, both are semiotic theory. So let's just unpack what this means a little bit further. Well, Peirce is a pragmatist. He's one of the founding fathers of the pragmatic school of theory. And then we have in Europe Saussure, who's a structuralist. So I'm not going to go any further into what those two things mean. I will focus in a future video on pragmatism in general as a philosophy that helps designers action their skill sets to move forward. So I'll be talking about the theory in connection to the design practice. And this is one of the last times I'll probably have anything on Saussure. I've already mentioned in a previous video about Peirce's semiotic theory is based upon triads, sets of three, whereas semiology, the signifier and the signified, is a dyadic structure too. So the signifier and the signified is the structuralist one. Pragmatic is essentially a different way of approaching semiotic theory, and the triadic nature is broken down into three key forms of his approach to things. These are terms that he defines himself, Peirce defines himself, of the object, the representment, and the interpretant. And those three are, there's a determination flow between those three. Before I move on to the determination flow, I would just finish off on Saussure, that his is the signifier and the signified dyadic. Triadic, pragmatic, dyadic, structuralist. Okay. As I said in previous videos, and I will say in future videos, Peirce's language is very problematic for anyone who is not Peirce, because he defined and created these words, representment and interpretant, and it pertains to his theory. The point behind these videos is for you to come away from them with more designer-centric terms that are a meta language that you understand, which will encompass his theory. So object, representment, and interpretant are very problematic words. So let's look at these in a different way. This is the determination flow between the three. Object in Peirce's language, from a designer-centric point of view, it's the concept you start from, the intention, the message that comes from your client that you need to actually think through and find out what it is that you need to visually communicate. The second one, the representment, is the representation that you decide upon that is going to be the most effective way of gaining the audience's attention over the noise to actually be able to focus them into making decisions about your design, positive decisions, hopefully, that will change their behavior. I'll talk about Frascara in future talks as well. If the representation, the representment, the representation that you define within your visual communication makes connections to your target audience, they will interpret it in the correct way that we want them to. So the interpretant is using a term that's better for designers, is how the visual communication will be interpreted by the audience. If it's interpreted the right way, they will make the connections to the meaning and the intention of the brief. So it should become a triangular flow from the concept, the object, to its representation, the representment, to its interpretant, which is the interpretation, and from the interpretation, the correct interpretation should reflect the concept. So this is what we call the determination flow, and I will talk about determination flows in future videos and unpack that further to more specific focus for graphic designers. This diagram came from a workshop that I did with a professor of semiotics, Paul Cobley, who's another Scouser, back in 2018 at the Graphic Design Educators Network conference in Northumbria University. And I've done that workshop a couple of times with designers. So these are the languages, these are the words that come out from designers and what designers use that can be used as a meta language over the top of Peircean terminology to make it more accessible to graphic designers. And that's the intent of these videos as we go forward. So that was our 10 minutes of Peircean Semiosis 101 for this week. You will now have a clearer understanding of how Peirce's semiosis theory of semiotics involves the audience directly in the sign action. By embedding a Peircean sign action model, we can enhance addressing our key audiences in our design process and improve how we connotatively visually communicate. This enhancement in our visual communication abilities rests in the communicational space between our concept, how it's represented, so that it facilitates a successful interpretation in our target audiences. Over the coming weeks in Semiosis 101, we will explore further how this semiotic determination flow can be applied to enhance visual communication. I hope as creatives you agree that Peirce's semiotic theory of semiosis offers a lot of rich pickings to enhance our visual communication skills. There will be another video next week, so come back again. Over the years, I have collaborated with other design academic researchers and Peircean semioticians to develop a designer-centric explanation of Peirce's theoretical language. If you are interested in reading my semiotic Rosetta Stone academic writing, then you can visit my academia link in the description. As a fellow creative and a published design author, I also have links in the description to my Scout Scots Redbubble shop featuring illustrated and typographical gift ranges, and to my 2014 design book published by Bloomsbury Publishing, Interface Design, an Introduction to Visual Communication in UI Design. Any other books on Peircean semiotics I've mentioned in the videos are also listed in the description. Check them out too. Thanks for watching. Check out the other videos, like and share them with your friends, and hit the bell button to be notified when next week's video is published. See you all again next week for more Semiosis 101 to help illustrators and designers to enhance your visual communication skills.